All right, how's it going, y'all? So today, I'm very excited because we're going to be going over probably my favorite deployment for video editors when they're getting a Synology NAS. So this is one that I really like because it's got not only a built-in backup system, but it also has both mixed SSD and HDD, which is perfect for video editing houses, everything like that, because it gives you the flexibility to have your active projects on lightning fast SSDs. So scrubbing through a timeline and things like that are going to be really smooth, even if you have 5 or 10 editors hitting it at the exact same time. But then you also have this archive pool that allows you to store your old projects and still have full access to them, but they're just on hard drives, so you don't have to pay that premium for SSDs for that project you delivered 3 months ago. Instead, it's just moved onto the archive folder, and now you are good to go. We also get a built-in backup from the SSD pool to the HDD pool, which means your entire SSD volume could fail. And I'm actually in this video going to go rip out all my SSDs and bring them down here. And you can very quickly get everybody back online and lose pretty minimal work. And we're going to go over how to set all of that up right now. We're going to be doing this on the RS2423 Plus, which is a great unit for this because it's got 12 bays up front, and it's also got an optional 12 bay expansion unit. That's how you get the 24 number up there. So you can actually even expand this out later on. So what you can do is you can start with 6 hard drives and 6 SSDs. And then if you really need to expand out one of them, what you can actually do is just buy that expansion unit, move all your hard drives to that one, and then get both more hard drives and more SSD, up to a total of 12 of each for 24 drives, which I think is a great place to be for these kind of deployments. I did convince Synology to send me this unit for free, and I do get to keep it, which is absolutely awesome. I will be using it as my primary NAS in a little bit here, but they do not get to see the videos ahead of time or get any input or editorial control over them or anything like that, and no money changed hands, but for the sake of transparency, they did send it to me for free. So one thing I do also want to mention at the very top of this video is this unit is one of the units that requires Synology hard drives. That's the easiest way to explain it. So essentially what will happen is if you put a non-Synology drive in there, or one that's not on their approved list, which is basically just Synology drives, it is going to create this pool and it's going to show the entire thing as orange. Now it is annoying, but it's not necessarily a full deal breaker. I still do deploy it for clients fairly often just because of the cost savings, but this is one unit that if we put non-Synology drives in, it's going to show up as warning status, though we will not lose any features other than support in theory. Though I'll be honest with you, I've had clients who've done this before, and then there was a hardware failure where the power supply died or something like that, and Synology did still replace it, which is great. Not saying that that's what will happen with you, but they do claim that they will not support it, but they're pretty good about supporting these business units. I've definitely found much better support when you go up with an RS unit, especially one of their units with 12 or more drives, than if you go in with a disk station unit. They will definitely treat you different between those two, which is in a lot of ways good because, well, you kind of get what you pay for. But I did want to make that clear here. Synology did send me Synology drives, though the SSDs are like 250 gigs and the hard drives are 4 terabytes. But this will be totally fine to actually show the demo, and you could easily do this with 2 terabyte hard drives, or even now 4 terabyte SSDs are actually getting pretty decent. If you are going to be buying SSDs for your NAS, I would recommend staying away from QLC ones, quadruple layer. Instead, I would recommend staying around the TLCs. Just from my own experience, you get better lifetime on them and you get much better performance, but that's a whole different video. All right, so now this right here is the RS2423 Plus, and really I've not done much to this unit at all. If you go into Storage Manager, the only things I've done so far is I've built the 2 pools. So this unit has 6 SSDs and 6 hard drives, and they're set up as 2 different storage pools. And so what I've done is these first 6 slots right here, even though they're counted in a different way, but these 6 slots to the left are all SSDs. I think they're about 500 gig SSDs. And on the right, they are 4 terabyte hard drives. And what I've done is storage pool 1 is a RAID 5 array of those 6 drives. So I've got 2.1 TB available to that. And then pool number 2 is those 6 hard drives in the same RAID 5 array. So right here, this is about as small as data as you can get. You could very easily expand this out to be much more. So you can buy 18 and 20 terabyte hard drives now. So if you wanted this hard drive pool to be bigger, you pretty easily get it to actually be 100 terabytes, which is kind of crazy for just 6 drives in a RAID 5 array. And then for SSDs, you can get 4 terabyte ones. And so that would be about 28 terabytes of usable SSD space. It's up to you. You can also change your ratio where you've got more hard drives or more SSDs, one than the other. And also, as I said earlier, you could also get the expansion unit and actually get up to 24 drives. Really flexible there. Though I do want to note one thing really quick. I do not recommend having a single storage pool go across that expansion unit. I would not recommend doing something like buying 24 hard drives and creating a RAID 6 array that goes between the expansion unit and the main unit itself with 24 drives. I would recommend making sure each storage pool is only located on one device. So either just on the expansion unit or just on the head unit. So right here, this is pretty much all the setup I've done. I've just logged in, created it, and not done pretty much anything at all. If you'd like to get started with this, I've got a getting started video. I'll leave a link down in the description below. But really, I just do the bare basics here and have created storage pool 1, which is the SSD, and storage pool 2, which is the hard drives, and they've got mirrored volumes there. And so what we're going to do to start is we're going to set up volume 1 as the SSD storage. I like to call it active. So I'm going to go into control panel and create a new shared folder. We're going to call it active-SSD. So right here, this opens you up the ability to also have an active HDD. So if you do one day have a ton of projects coming in, you would also have it on the HDD pool as well if you had a lower importance project. But for a lot of people, you can just call this active. And we are making sure it's on that volume 1, which is that SSD pool. I did enable a recycling bin, and I'm not going to encrypt it. Once again, this is just video. If you are going to encrypt it, I would recommend encrypting the entire volume, not just the shared folder, especially for video editors. We are going to enable checksum for advanced data integrity. It does have a little bit of an overhead, but I think it is well worth it because it makes sure that your files have a much lower chance of getting corrupted. So I think it's well worth it. I've not been able to really find a huge difference when it comes to something like video editing. I have seen it with virtual machines, but for video editing, I've just not seen a big difference. And one important thing we can also enable here is a quota. So I've got 2 TB available to this thing, but you really don't want to go above like 75% full. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that to 1500 gigabytes, about 75% of the overall pool. The reason I do this is video editors are horrible about filling up their storage. And so if you create a quota before they can get there, it really helps everything out because then they don't go, oh no, we're out of space and then get to the end. Instead, they kind of hit an artificial limit first. And that way you kind of keep it underneath that. And I would highly recommend doing this because it's definitely one of those things that you don't want to get to 100% full or anything like that, especially with this workflow. And now we're just going to go ahead and create it. We've not made our users or anything, so I'm just going to go next. Now, the next piece we're going to go ahead and do is create a second shared folder, and this is going to be that archive. And we're going to make sure that it is on volume 2, which is that larger one. Here, not really going to add a quota. You can if you need to. All right, so now we've got our active in our archive folder. So what we can easily start doing is right now just mounting this and starting to video edit off of it. But one thing I did mention that I like to do here is I like to have a backup of this active data in a second place. So if you have a second NAS, this is great to do where you can actually send it over to that second NAS. And now you're actually protected from hardware failure as well. So the entire Synology could fail and you can keep going. But here we're going to keep it super simple where we're going to have for our active data, 2 copies of the data on this unit, because in the vast majority of cases, the thing that fails is not the actual hardware of the Synology. Personally, I have seen that happen very few times, if at all. Really, it was just when there was like the Intel Celeron bug that kind of occurred. What's much more likely to happen is drive failure, be it SSDs fail or anything like that. So we're going to protect ourselves from that by actually replicating this active SSD folder from the SSDs to the actual hard drives. And so we are going to have a built-in second copy that we can super easily switch over to. And we can actually switch over to this without our users really having to do anything at all. And we're going to use a great feature called snapshots to do this. If you've seen any of my videos, you've seen me talk about snapshots. So we're just going to go into the package center. and search for snapshot. And we're going to go ahead and install it. And in this case, specifically, all the other packages I will recommend installing on volume 1 because that's our fast SSD volume, so we want that to be as quick as possible. But here, we actually want to install snapshot replication on volume 2 because we want this to work if volume 1 fails. Now, it's not that big of a deal because if it does fail, we can always just reinstall snapshot replication on volume 2. But just to make this easier, because I know I'm going to do this in a test up here where I'm going to rip out the SSDs and bring them down here, we're just going to have snapshot replication installed and ready to go on volume 2, which is that hard drive unit. And now what we're going to do is we're going to set up 2 different schedules. And first off, it's going to say, hey, we see that record file access time is enabled on these volumes. We want to go ahead and disable that. So we're going to go back into our storage manager and hit these 3 dots in settings and set record file access time to never. This is especially good for video editors who are reading tons and tons and tons of frames. And so there's no reason to record when those frames were last opened. Very little software ever uses it. I disable it for pretty much everybody. It's a good reminder to have in here. And first off, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a snapshot schedule. So snapshots are local. Then we can also replicate them to a second storage medium. So first off, we're going to set up a snapshot schedule for both active and archive. And for both of these, this is kind of like macOS Time Machine. It's going to give the ability to just roll back the clock to a previous time. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the one for active SSD, and we're going to create a schedule for it. We are going to start whenever the business kind of opens, whenever people show up, like 8 a.m., and we'll go every hour. You could also go every 30 minutes, but I think every hour should be solid for this. And we'll go till you're kind of done, whatever those hours are. And so what'll happen is every day, and you could also just set this to days you're working, it will take a snapshot every hour from 8 to 10, 8 to 8. And so what that'll allow you to do is it will give you a point in time ability to roll back the clock to any of those hours. The next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is set up the retention policy. So snapshots don't really take up space. You should think of them a lot like a recycling bin. Having a recycling bin does not take up space. It only takes up space when you delete a file because it goes to the recycling bin. Snapshots work in the exact same way. You can take a snapshot every 5 minutes for a volume, and if it does not actually change, if you don't delete any files out of it, it is not going to take up any space. But what snapshots do is they hold on to previous versions of files. What we're going to do is we're going to have a custom retention policy for the SSD volume here. So for the SSDs, we're going to keep all snapshots for 3 days, and then a version of the day for the past. Well, let's just honestly do that. We will just keep snapshots for 3 days because we're also going to be keeping these snapshots on the hard drive volume. So essentially what this will mean is from the moment you delete a file to the moment you space back on the SSDs will be 3 days. But we can customize this on the hard drive unit to have extra protection. If you are not going to be replicating this to a hard drive unit, you can also set the snapshot to be like 30 days or whatever. What this will essentially be is whatever the longest one of these is will control how long it takes from the moment you delete a file to the moment your space back on the actual storage pool. That's the easiest way to understand how snapshots take up space. And we're also going to make them visible. Great. So that is our schedule for active. Every hour is great. Now our schedule for archive is going to be a lot more chill. We're going to have it every like 4 hours. And we're actually going to set this one to be immutable. So immutable means that you cannot delete it. Even the administrator cannot delete them for, in this case, 7 days. We're not going to do that for the SSDs because once again, video editors love to fill up their space to 100%, and having them immutable means you can't quickly reclaim space. But for the hard drives on the archive, we are going to have them immutable for 7 days. I talk about this in other videos, but what this allows you to do is even if somebody gets your admin credentials and has admin access to DSM, they cannot delete these snapshots, which means they cannot fully remove the files out for at least 7 days. And now we're going to have a much better retention policy here. we're going to keep all snapshots for 14 days, and then the dailies for maybe 60 days. Especially for something like archive. Why are you deleting your archive? Generally, archive is something that's very rarely deleted from. And so having snapshots a day for 60 days means that you have 60 days to figure out if somebody screwed up and deleted the wrong thing from archive. This has saved a bunch of people before. And once again, we will make them visible. All right, so now we have set up our snapshots. And before we go into the replication stuff, I want to show how this actually works when you've got the drives mounted. So I'm going to go ahead and mount them right now. All right, so great. I've got both SSD and archive both mounted. And I'm just going to go ahead and dump some footage into it. And this is how we're actually going to use it. So I'm just going to add some footage I've got from another one. I'm going to just drag my template file on over. All right, so now while that is copying on in there, we can go ahead and just open this up. And it is simple. We have now opened up this share on Final Cut Pro. All we had to do was copy over a new project to it, and pretty much it just works as if anything else happens. So Final Cut Pro, DaVinci, and also Premiere all have really easy ability to just be thrown on an SMB network share. That's really it. So you can mount them from both macOS or Windows File Explorer, and it really just kind of works. This is really valuable for making it really easy to have multiple people working on projects. So DaVinci has the ability to actually have kind of check out and check in projects. You can actually be working on the same project in multiple places. So does actually Resolve. So does Premiere. Final Cut Pro, only one person can have a project open at a given time without additional plugins. But we have the ability to just open it up on multiple devices. It is phenomenal. If you've never video edited off of a NAS, especially if you've got a team, it is incredibly valuable because it unlocks so much flexibility and capability. But right here, we're just going to go ahead and pull in that footage really quick, just the demo. Some of it's working still. And just like that, it is pulled on in. Works totally normally. All right, so right there, I can go on about how video editing works and everything, but we've just got the footage plugged on in. There, it's trying to encode. I'm just going to go ahead and close it. All right, so now we've got all of our footage in here. Let's go ahead and just kind of give this demo of a snapshot for how this process would work. So I'm just going to go in, and instead of waiting for the every hour snapshot to take, I'm just going to go ahead and take a manual one right here because I think it's got a lot of value in just showing how this works. So now we've got the ability to mess stuff up. So I just took that snapshot, and now I'm going to open up that Final Cut Pro bundle again, and let's break some stuff, right? Let's say the intern comes in and deleted all the events in the library. Who knows? Well, it won't let me. We'll delete the actual one right here. So we went through and we messed up, and the intern deleted something. Now you come up and open it, and you've got the entire thing is gone, right? A major section's gone. This could also be somebody made a bad edit or anything like that. There's infinite flexibility here. You could also have deleted a file. We can also say that somebody saved over a JPEG, renamed a folder. Whatever it is, you can undo it with snapshots, which is really great. So we've just found the intern got into this demo for video folder and messed everything up, right? Renamed this folder, deleted the thumbnail, messed up the Final Cut Pro bundle, whatever. That is where these snapshots come in. So if you see, we've got the device mounted, and we just go into the snapshot folder, and this is going to be filled with a list of timestamps. We're just going to go to the most recent snapshot that had everything work, and we can look, oh hey, everything's perfect in this snapshot folder. This is exactly what we want it to be. So what we can do is we've got a few different options. We can either be really specific, so maybe we only want to copy back over this thumb file, or we can copy everything back on over. Let's see here. We've already got the media folder in here, so we'll only copy, we're going to basically delete out these broken versions right here. But we'll keep the media because the media is going to take a while to copy. Now what we're just going to do is we're going to open up that snapshot folder. So the lower screen down here is going to be the snapshot folder. And this is that timestamp where I took it manually or automatically. It's going to be taken every hour. And now we can see, okay, we want to basically bring in these 3 files. And so we're just going to copy them and paste them. And just like that, we rolled back the clock. Now, we went from the snapshot one to the current time, and whatever that intern did, we've just undone effectively. We open up, oh, there's raw video. Everything's back exactly how it was. This is a phenomenal feature to have. I cannot stress enough how powerful snapshots are because it is an undo button for the file system. They are like a recycling bin on steroids. All right, so now we've got that set up. So I hope this helps understand what snapshots do and how powerful they are. We would also have the ability to just roll back entirely. That's especially useful if somebody gets ransomware, computer on the network gets a virus, encrypts all the files it has access to. We can actually just roll back the entire shared folder instantaneously. All right, so now that's gone through what the local snapshots are. Now I want to go ahead and set up that replication from the SSDs to the hard drives. So we're going to go back into snapshots, but now we are going to use the replication feature. And replications of snapshots are incredibly efficient. It works really well because it does not have to scan and figure out what's over there. If you've ever used a backup program before, you know that if you run a backup and nothing's changed, a lot of time it can still take an hour, especially if there's a large amount of data and a lot of files, to figure out that nothing's actually changed. That's where replication comes in. Snapshot replication is near instantaneous because it already knows what's on the destination and what's here using the snapshots. Really, really, really cool. Allows you to do a snapshot of a 200 terabyte file system instantaneously and replicate it every hour without even having to worry about long times of the entire file system scanning. So we're going to go ahead and set up this replication job. And this can either be to a separate device, or in this case, it's just going to be the volume 2. So we are going to go hit create. And in this case, we're going to do a local. A remote would be another Synology NAS located somewhere else. The destination volume is going to be volume 2. That's that hard drive volume. And now we want to choose what data to replicate. We're going to do active SSD. And now we create our schedule. We're actually just going to mirror the exact same one that we had on the other one. From 8 to 8 every hour. And in this case, we're also going to allow immutable snapshots to get real ransomware protection. So now, for 7 days, your active data cannot be deleted, even if somebody has full admin access. But that is on the hard drive pool. Really valuable there. Finally, we need to go ahead and create our retention policy for the hard drive pool. So this is where we were really aggressive and we only kept 3 days of snapshots on the main active SSD because now we can keep them for much longer because they're only taking up space on cheap hard drives. So for our retention policy, we're going to keep all snapshots for 7 days and we will keep a daily for 60 days. This is totally tunable to your workflow. Depends on how many jobs you get, how quickly you're going through them, and how much space you have on the hard drives. It is very easy to edit this later on. So you are more than welcome to be aggressive here and then cut back later on if you find that you're running low on space. And now we should see this scooting along quite quickly. SSDs are very fast and replication is very, very, very fast. So we are flying along with that. Basically just maxing out the speed of those 6 hard drives. So I'm just going to let this go ahead and finish. Great. So it has now gone ahead and finished. If we open up Control Panel, we're going to see this additional folder now, but it's going to be read only. And so we can see it has the exact same data as of right now, but if we try to delete anything, because it's a snapshot, it is read only, which is really valuable. So you know none of your editors will accidentally screw up and try to save their data here because they can't save anything. Now let's go ahead and actually rename this in Control Panel to make it a little easier. So it's the active SSD volume backed up to hard drives. I just think it makes it a lot easier for people to understand rather than the -1. So now this sync is going to happen automatically. We can also manually run it if we need to. And it will happen very, very, very quickly because it already knows what's over there and it doesn't have to scan all the files on there. If nothing's changed, it's going to run as fast with 100 gigs in there as 100 terabytes. Not quite, but essentially that. It is incredibly fast because it doesn't have to scan the files, which is really, really, really valuable. So now if we open up SMB, we will see that we can actually still see that folder in there, which is actually quite useful for being able to look at previous versions of files if you ever need to. So we can see it there. And so we could actually see that we're going to have these snapshots for a considerably longer amount of time on this backup for HDD right there. Very valuable to have. All right, so now I want to go ahead and do the demo of how great this is and being able to switch on over. But first, I do want to go in and show a couple of SMB settings for video editors, just really quick stuff that I would recommend doing. We're just going to go, they're all in file services. For one, if you're trying to get the utmost performance, disabling the transfer log will actually help with that due to the fact that you've got tons and tons and tons of small changes to files, especially if you're generating previews. But you do lose the ability to go back and figure out who did what. We're also going to go into advanced settings, disable encryption because it really slows it down, enable durable handles, disable reserving disk space when creating files, really useful for tons and tons of the small files that are built whenever you're generating render files. And we are also going to allow asynchronous read. Really, really, really useful to have because it's just going to speed up all of these processes. Finally, we're also going to enable file fast clone because that way, when you copy and paste on the same shared folder, it's an instant copy and it doesn't take up space. So if you need somebody to have access to footage in another folder, you can actually instantly copy it, even if it's a terabyte, and it won't take up extra space because it knows it was identical at the beginning. Really cool feature of BTRFS and a copy on write file system that you can do that kind of stuff. So now let's go ahead and do this demo of actually destroying the SSD volume and showing how easy it is going to be to recover from this. We have just done a replication, and with these schedules, anybody will lose up to 1 hour of work. If the SSDs fail at 9:59, a minute before the snapshot takes, you will have lost 59 minutes of work, basically from the last time the snapshot has run. So I'm going to go ahead, run upstairs and rip out these SSDs, and we are going to go ahead and see how easy it is to recover. All right, well, I unfortunately also ripped out the hard drive because I thought they were in a different order than they were, but we should be able to repair this still. So I accidentally ripped out one of the hard drives. Not a big deal, but right here we can see that volume 1 is just gone. It's crashed because it had one drive of fault tolerance and I ripped out 3 of the SSDs. So now we tried to open up and see anything on this active SSD. Well, that's interesting. It still has the metadata for it, but if we tried to download anything, well, funny enough, the other one was just stored in RAM apparently and was able to be downloaded. But right now, we are unable to download these files because, well, it's just gone. So now this is absolutely a worst case scenario, right? It's gone full-blown dead, basically. What we can do is we can fix this now. So everybody's computer is mounting active SSD, which is now gone. So what we can do is we can say, you know, we've lost that volume. We are going to go ahead and just remove it. So we could actually either go in and just remove the storage pool. That is just completely gone and crashed, right? This is where there's no recovering of this. We're just going to go in and remove this storage pool out. Because, quite frankly, there's nothing we can do. We have lost 3 times as many drives as we can lose. So I'm just going to completely remove out storage pool 1. All right, so we have now completely removed out that storage pool 1. So we open up control panel again after kind of refreshing. We should see that, boom, active SSD, backup HD is the only one left. It's gone. Now, if you had had snapshot replication installed on storage pool 1, all we would have to do is just reinstall it here. So now that we removed out storage pool 1, active backup HD has automatically become read-write because now its primary was just completely destroyed. So the one thing we're going to do is everybody's expecting this to be called active SSD. That's actually all we have to do now is edit this. And we're just going to edit the name to be identical to what it was earlier. And then I always just add a little note, hey, this is on HDD due to the failure. And just like that, when we remount everything, we just are going to have to eject it. And we can remount it as the exact same name as we saw earlier. And the cool thing is, since we named it the same thing, Final Cut Pro and all your other softwares are just going to relink the media as if nothing happened because it's in the exact same place as it's expecting to be. Now everybody can be working off this pretty much no problems. The only thing is now you've gone from having it on lightning fast SSDs to slower hard drives. But I don't think anybody's going to be complaining when they're still able to work. That is the really nice thing. So it's really valuable to have this kind of backup solution because it truly allows you to recover from an entire volume going down. And one other thing is because I accidentally also ripped out one of the hard drives, it's got to run the scrub. So it's going to be a little bit slower right now. But that's pretty much all we have to do to set it up. Then whenever you get your SSDs back and you recover everything, and once again, this is a worst case scenario where an entire volume has gone down, right? Once you get it back, you can just do the reverse process and boom, now you've just got it going again. I've had to do this a couple of times and it's really valuable having that hard drive backup because you have the ability to not only have a much longer time where you got access to your files, but you also get really nice ability to have an entire array go down and you still have access to your files and your guys can be editing within 15 minutes. I mean, I think this entire process for me took about 10 minutes and I was doing it on camera. So it's really nice being able to fail over that quickly and just get back up and running. And a lot of value is if it's in the same system, your users and groups are already there and everybody's used to logging in and it does keep it a lot easier to switch on over. So that's how you set it up. All right, well, that's going to be it for this tutorial. I really love this setup of having the mixed SSD and HDD volumes because it just gives so much flexibility when you're working on stuff like this. If you'd like to hire me to set this up for you, go ahead and check out the link down in the comments below and have a good one. Bye.